Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you on this Wednesday afternoon. We got a great show for you guys today. Fantastic. You're not going to want to miss this. We've got my takes from the Kavanaugh hearing yesterday. Interesting, especially considering there's a little bit of drama involved. We also have a story about Nancy Pelosi, what she plans to do with the Democrats, or I should say what the Democratic establishment plans to do if there is a blue wave, which of course is looking more likely than it has before, and I've got the details on that. Then we also have more Woodward stuff on Trump. That's fun. Then finally we're going to go to disaster, which is the Arctic is melting. It's on fire. Oh no. Oh, it's going to be a disaster. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff here. It's going to be a fun show, so stick around. Right now, of course, we have another set of Kavanaugh hearings going on, which of course is going to be very interesting as well. As I said before, I don't want to give away too much, but I've got a very strong opinion on what the Democrats need to do to stop Kavanaugh. But first, I'm going to do some other stories. Okay. Before I get into it, please, everybody watching, very important, please share the stream. Super, super important. Also, it is more important than ever to support independent progressive media, especially through Super Chat or Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. Of course, YouTube is hitting indie media pretty hard. So it's more important than ever to help progressive media stay on the air. So, if you haven't already, please sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. Any amount helps. So we are not backed by big corporations here. I'm not backed by any companies. I don't get Soros money or anything like that. So it's basically YouTube ads and then you guys. And YouTube ads are very, very historically unreliable when it comes to revenue. So, if we could be majority funded by you guys, which is not the case right now, then it would guarantee that this show stays on the air, and I can continue to bring you some of these great stories. So, anyway, that said, begging over, let's go into the news. Okay. So yesterday was the first hearing for President Trump's Supreme Court pick, Brett Kavanaugh. Now, Kavanaugh has a lot of problems. He's an incredibly partisan right-wing judge whose previous decisions include ruling on behalf of SeaWorld. That's after a trainer was literally eaten on the job by a killer whale. Amazing story, horrible story. But basically what Kavanaugh ruled is, he died at work, but that doesn't mean his job's at fault. Companies should not be liable if you die on the job. Oh, well, that's an interesting decision. So you can kind of guess that he's incredibly pro-corporate. He's like Neil Gorsuch in that regard. Neil Gorsuch, of course, would rather have somebody, truck driver, die than leave his truck. Go ahead, just die. The corporation, you must die. You give your life serving the corporations. Great. So it's no surprise that progressives are against this guy, and also, of course, Democrats. And there were even some mass protests. Now, I want to show you a video of some of the Democrats supposedly fighting back against this. And we're going to go to a video here with Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. Let's take a look.
I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed. The committee received just last night less than 15 hours ago,
Mr. Chairman, regular order.
42,000 pages of documents that we have not had an opportunity to review or read or analyze.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
Mr. Chairman,
Their
I
extended
agree with my
family and
colleague,
friends,
Senator Harris. Mr. Chairman,
Judge
we
Kavanaugh's
received
many law
42,000
clerks,
documents that we haven't
and
been able
everyone else
to
joining us
review last
today.
night, and we believe this hearing
I
should be
know this is an
postponed.
exciting day for all of you here, and you're rightly proud
Mr. Chairman,
of the
if
judge.
we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
The American people.
Chairman, I move
get
to adjourn.
hear directly from Judge Kavanaugh later this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn. Mr. Chairman, we have been denied real access to the documents we need to advise.
Chairman,
and
regular
consent,
order is called for.
which turns this hearing into a charade and a mockery of our norms.
Well-
And Mr. Chairman, I therefore move to adjourn this hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so Cory Booker was not actually in that, but he was also calling for this thing to be adjourned. You had Amy Klobuchar, of course, and Richard Blumenthal. So you had like a lot of Democrats and mainly people who are running for 2020, and that's of course related to why they're making a spectacle, saying, "Oh, we need to we just postpone the hearing. Postpone the hearing. We got all these documents, and to be fair, they got over 40,000 documents the night before. There's no way they could read through that. These are the same people who got mad when the Democrats pushed through the ACA. Oh, you didn't let us read the documents. You're doing the same thing. You're doing the same thing. So not only that, but of course, you actually had real protesters there that protested as well. So it kind of turned into a circus. Now, what happened? Did Grassley adjourn? No, of course not. He's not interested. Yeah, we hear your objections, and guess what? We don't give a damn. So now that, of course, led Dianne Feinstein, who could have done something, not doing anything. Instead, she delivered her prepared opening statement, which then, of course, let the hearing proceed. So, hey, Judge Kavanaugh gets his hearing. Now, that, of course, is a far different fate than Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, you see, never received a hearing during the last year of President Obama's term. So there's an interesting story about how that happened, right? Now, Republicans had removed the power of the minority pretty much at the end of the Obama administration when it came to local judges, which, look, dumb move, right? On the part of Democrats who did the nuclear option. Look, Democrats didn't have the power to stop them. Before they had the filibuster, now they do not have the filibuster anymore. So, meaning that all they need to confirm Kavanaugh is a simple majority of Republicans. Now, the Democrats did have, or I should say do have, one trick left up their sleeve. They can just walk out. They could deny Kavanaugh a hearing. They could say, okay, we're not going to be there. We're not going to provide a quorum. So, is that what they did? No, of course. They did not do that. Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, the rest, Amy Klobuchar, they protested, but that's all they do. They don't actually take bold action. I mean, again, Republicans are stunned at how feckless the Democrats are when it comes to the Kavanaugh fight. In fact, on MSNBC's Morning Joe, former staffer to the late Senator John McCain, Steve Schmidt, had remarked, quote, "It seems Democrats are absolutely determined to bring butter knives to every gunfight forever." So what does he mean by that? Well, look, here's the thing. Democrats, they don't actually fight for things. They don't fight against Republicans. They spend most of their energy, time, and money fighting against progressives. But Mitch McConnell, here's the thing. Mitch McConnell was absolutely vicious when it came to blocking Merrick Garland. They pulled out every dirty procedural trick in the book. including not giving Garland a hearing. They simply said, we're not going to even allow a hearing on Merrick Garland. Oh, you want a hearing? Sad day. We're not even going to give him that, and we're not going to give him a vote. That was President Obama's pick. Did not allow a vote. This is a stolen seat. Okay? And now here we have a president who's apparently incredibly dangerous. If you ask the resistance, and I actually do agree that he is dangerous. He's dangerously stupid for the and a definite problem for the country. But here you have Democrats who are not fighting against that. See, you have a president right now. President Trump is named as a co-conspirator to a crime. The Democrats still give his pick a hearing. And why is that? Well, you'll love this. It's because they want to give cover to a couple of red state Democrats. There's people like Joe Donnelly, Heidi Heitkamp, and Joe Manchin. Places where Trump actually did incredibly well. Now, how are they doing it? By letting these hearings continue and by letting these red state Democrats remain neutral. Oh, for fuck's sake. Here's their strategy. Now, Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin is quoted as saying, quote, as all Chuck ever says in caucus meetings is pretty well known. Keep your powder dry, don't commit, stay as neutral as you can, as long as you can. That's their strategy going into the Kavanaugh hearings. Saying, we're not going to take a side against Kavanaugh. We're not going to, we're going to allow these red state Democrats, Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp, to stay neutral and to not commit to blocking Kavanaugh. I'm not going to be a leader. I'm not going to lead. I'm going to let these guys do this. Keep your powder dry, guys. Their entire strategy hinges on the more moderate Republicans blocking Judge Kavanaugh. You know that there is Suzanne Collins. She's like, I don't know. I'm not exactly comfortable with Kavanaugh, especially when it comes to his, his views on abortion, right? If she blocks Kavanaugh, Republican donors are going to spend over $300,000 in ads targeted against her. They've already made that threat. We're going to bring out the money, and we're going to deny you re-election. That's the kind of tricks Republicans do. But Chuck Schumer says, keep your powder dry, guys. Keep your powder dry. Don't do anything. Don't you dare resist. No. Be neutral. Be neutral. Don't walk out. That's your strategy. Does that sound like a leader to you? Don't do anything. You must be neutral. Oh, look at that. Did the Republicans win again? Gee, looks like there was nothing we could do. We did the great strategy of leading from the middle, of not doing a damn thing. Nothing we could do. No, there's actually something you can do, and that's walk out. Get some balls, walk out. That's it. Deny them a hearing. But they're not going to do that, are they? No, of course not. No. You're going to offer some mild resistance for the camera and let Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, and Joe Donnelly vote for Kavanaugh so that they could possibly get reelected in their states. It's ridiculous. And look, that's exactly what they did with Neil Gorsuch. They lost because they're paid to lose. Chuck Schumer is not a leader. He is a disaster. And you have establishment Democrats that are pointing that out. In fact, I'm going to go to a quote here from a former Harry Reid staffer named Adam Jentelson. Now he says, quote, the state of Senate Dems fast-tracked Trump judges while apologizing for confirming Obama judges. If we hadn't gone nuclear in 2013, we would have confirmed fewer judges. And that's what they said. The Democrats came out and apologized. Oh, no, we're so sorry that we had to come up against your unprecedented obstruction from Mitch McConnell and the rest of the minority who were in the minority, Republicans. We're sorry we did that. We're sorry we challenged you. This is the Democratic Party right now. He said, McConnell would have just gone nuclear himself and had even more vacancies to fill with Trump judges. And he said, what I find most depressing about this is that the tone of the caucus conversations has shifted from how do we stop bad things from happening to how do we find an excuse to fold on important fights, then convince ourselves that folding is savvy, not cowardice. This is the state of the Democratic Party. This is what they're doing. They're fighting. They're resisting Kavanaugh by laying down and doing nothing. Look, here's what happened. Obama judges, right? Facing incredible obstruction from Mitch McConnell, Democrats did the nuclear option at the end of Obama's presidency. They confirmed a few judges, right? Now, I think that was a bad strategy. Why? If you're going to do it, you need to do it at the beginning of the year, or at least when they start saying that we're going to obstruct everything. You say, okay, we're going to do it now, and then appoint as many as you can. That didn't happen. They didn't do it, and guess what? All those vacancies are now going to Trump judges. It is unreal how bad the Democrats are at politics. And not just politics, but they're also bad at policy. Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are going to have a lifetime of making decisions on important policies. Not only that, but you have circuit court judges that are also going to make lifetime worth of decisions. This has changed the Supreme Court for generations. It has now gone to the conservatives. And it's all because the Democrats are too weak to fight back. And why? Because they're paid to be weak. And here's the final kick in the pants. Most of the public, they don't want Judge Kavanaugh. You know what he's pulling at? About 37 to 38%. He is deeply unpopular. And yet the Democrats are still not actually fighting him. They're putting up a lot of show, but they're not actually doing anything. In fact, as I said, their strategy is to get a photo op. So then they can go and say, look at us. We resisted. Now vote for us. They actually fast-tracked Trump judges so that they could go home early. Oh, yeah, no, go ahead and pass these guys through. You know, I covered that story the other day that didn't get a lot of attention. Look, here's the thing. The Democrats don't want to fight. All they want to do is meet with their donors and get money. They're playing politics, and they're playing it incredibly poorly. And at the end of the day, these Democrats are going to be complicit in whatever terrible decisions these conservative justices rule on, because they don't fight. In order to stop the damage these guys can do, Democrats need to become vicious fighters. But they're not going to. Not under Chuck Schumer, not under Nancy Pelosi. They're not going to fight as long as we have feckless leaders in charge. We need to replace those leaders with strong progressives who actually do know how to fight. Primaries, primaries, primaries. Okay. All right. Let's move on. So today marks the second day of the Kavanaugh hearings, and already it's produced a ton of dramatic moments, from the arrest of protesters to the interruptions by the Democrats. But one actually stands out quite a bit as something that really defines who Brett Kavanaugh is as a person. Now, it happened when the nominee declined to shake hands with a man named Fred Guttenberg. Now, who's Fred Guttenberg? Well, Guttenberg is actually the father of a young girl who died in the school shooting in Parkland, Florida. Now, Guttenberg's daughter, Jamie, was 14 when she was killed by the gunman who opened fire at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in February. And since then, of course, Guttenberg has become a vocal proponent of gun control measures. Now, as Tuesday's morning session ended, Guttenberg said he approached Kavanaugh for a handshake. He said, quote, "Put out my hand to introduce myself as Jamie Guttenberg's dad. He pulled his hand back, turned his back to me, and walked away. I guess he did not want to deal with the reality of gun violence." So later on, we're going to show you a video of him on CNN basically talking about this. But look, what he did, what Kavanaugh did, that's cold, man. Total snub. Now, the White House, of course, pushed back. You're going to love this excuse. In a tweet, White House Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah described the encounter this way. As Judge Kavanaugh left for his lunch break, an unidentified individual approached him. Before the judge was able to shake his hand, security had intervened. Now, oh no, it's security. Not my fault. Not Judge Kavanaugh's fault. He didn't do anything. No, it's just this rando coming up and trying to get in here, and security was like, I don't think so. How convenient of an excuse. I mean, what, you think he might have been a security threat going along with their logic? Well, he wasn't before, but afterwards, they sure considered him one. But before I get to that, I want to go to Guttenberg here on CNN. Let's take a look.
I was there all day, as you said, the request of Senator Feinstein. And when I was listening to Judge Kavanaugh this morning at his introduction, he looked over at his family. And he specifically talked about his kids. And he's got a beautiful family. I went up to him as a dad, to be quite honest. I don't go home to my complete family anymore. My daughter was killed. And I am really concerned about how he is going to rule on certain things that matter a lot to me, because I don't want to see other families go through what we've gone through. The NRA is spending a lot of money to help get him selected. But the problem is they're also filing lawsuits all over the country. Florida, for example, we actually passed gun safety after what happened in Parkland. The NRA filed a lawsuit. These lawsuits are going to end up in front of a Justice Kavanaugh. And unfortunately, based upon his prior statements and rulings, we can predict how he's going to rule. Candidly, my hope to him was simply to say, I hope you change your stance. I hope you look in my eye. I hope you see that this pin that I wear on my lapel or these bracelets that I wear, that's all I have to get close to my daughter now. And I hope you can be part of making sure no other parent has to feel the way I do, because we can fix this. And I'm concerned that he won't be that person. But he's a father, and I was hoping to appeal to that.
Well, you saw how he reacted. He had no interest in speaking to this father because, look, as the guy put it, he's incredibly right-wing on guns. Look, let me give you some examples here. There was a 2011 dissent case, or I should say, in 2011, he dissented in a case while he was overruled by two other Republican-appointed judges. So these are right-wing judges, and Kavanaugh is even more right-wing. Now, what was this about? Well, the court's majority opinion in that specific case had upheld Washington, D.C.'s ban on semi-automatic firearms and its gun registration law. Kavanaugh was like, no. I'm going to dissent on both of those things. I think we shouldn't have a ban on semi-automatic firearms, and we shouldn't have gun registration. Shouldn't have any of that. In fact, in his dissent, he said there is no meaningful or persuasive distinction between a semi-automatic pistol and a semi-automatic rifle. No meaningful or persuasive distinction. They are the same thing. Pistol, same as a rifle. Nope, completely the same. Really, I find that a little difficult to believe. Not only that, but it gets more insane. He went on to compare a ban on a class of arms, such as so-called assault weapons, to a, quote, ban on a category of speech. Oh, no. No, you're banning speech. So let me get this right. Judge Kavanaugh is also very pro-corporate. He's pro-Citizens United, right? So he's pro-money is speech and pro-guns are speech, too. So now here's the question for Kavanaugh. So if you shoot somebody, does that just mean you're talking to them? I mean, the same thing. If you give somebody money is speech, then you're just talking to them, right? So if I shoot somebody, am I just talking to them? Is that pretty much the same as using caps lock to yell at them? Kinda. At least maybe in his mind. I don't know. I mean, if guns are speech, then speech can't be regulated, at least according to conservatives. Although, of course, speech most certainly can be regulated when it comes to yelling fire in a crowded theater, for example. Their argument, no, you can't. And if that's the argument, which is what they use, of course, to argue against campaign contribution limits, well, then guns also, by definition, if they're an expression of free speech, also can't be regulated. Does that mean he thinks we should be able to go out and buy automatic weapons? There's also an argument being made that you should be able to. Hey, man, automatic weapons, that's my speech. If I want to go out and get an AK-47, that's my right. Why are you going to take away my free speech? Why are you going to take away my rights, man? It's insanity. Going back to Guttenberg, no wonder Kavanaugh doesn't have any interest in shaking his hand. It really does show that he doesn't care about the victims of mass shootings. Now, look, I'd understand maybe if he was like, hey, look, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about your daughter. I'm sorry about, these mass shootings. I'm going to come up with something, and hopefully we can come up with something to put an end to these mass shootings. We happen to disagree on how to make that happen, but I want to make sure that no tragedies like this ever happen. Well, if he did that, then maybe you would think, okay, look, the guy's, he's obviously wrong on the policy positions, but hey, at least he's got empathy, and maybe you could try to break through to him. But no, he doesn't have empathy. In fact, I would argue that he has malice, that he hates these people. Oh, come on, Jeff. Malice? Are you kidding me? Well, let me tell you what happened afterwards before you get on me too much about that. According to Guttenberg, he said, what happened after lunch is that I got back in the room and sat down. And then security came back a couple of minutes later, pulled me out of the room, and said that they thought, or Judge Kavanaugh thought, that I may have crossed a boundary. Wait. Now, Guttenberg says, I think it definitely was the judge that asked the security guards to escort me out, because he described to authorities the bracelets the father wears to commemorate his slain daughter. So basically he's saying, I do think it was the judge that asked me to leave, because I had the temerity to approach him and say, hey, my daughter was murdered. I hope that you would change your position. I hope you change your vote. That was enough to get Kavanaugh, allegedly, to get security on him, to kick him out. Oh, no, I'm not going to be bothered by this rabble. Fathers of slain children by guns? Not interested. You don't pay you don't give me money. Like the NRA. I'm not interested in meeting them. I'm not interested in shaking their hands. Not interested in hearing their stories. Nope. Kick them out. I don't want them here. I don't care. If that's true, well, then that's who Brett Kavanaugh really is. And who he is a terrible person. He does not belong on the Supreme Court. Okay. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come back. I'm going to go to a break. And then I'm going to come back with a story about Nancy Pelosi and what's going to happen if there's a blue wave and Pelosi is in charge. You're not going to want to miss that story. Very interesting stuff. Then, of course, Donald Trump, more Woodward stuff. That's fun. And then climate disaster. So Make sure if you have a super chat, you can send that. That helps support the show, and I will read them after following the break. All right, guys. We'll be back. Stay right here, Around the Nation. Everybody, welcome back to the show. Run the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you today. Before we get to the rest of the show, I want to remind everybody to please share the stream. And if you can, please help out with the super chats, as well as consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYT Nation. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk. And by the way, there's a lot of great suggestions that I have to do future shows with. So I am going to look into that. So, all right. Thank you, guys. All right. So let's move on. Let's go to the Democrats. As if I haven't went after them enough today. So following the unpopularity of Donald Trump, Republicans are facing a blue wave come November. In fact, in recent polls, Democrats hold a plus 14 advantage over Republicans in midterms. So that's a pretty big deal, which means they could possibly retake the House. But hey, don't worry, Republicans. Nancy Pelosi just promised that if that happens, she's not going to do anything progressive. David Dayen of The Intercept is reporting that Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has made the public a big promise in her new legislative agenda if the Democrats decide to win. One of those big things is that she is promising to resurrect something called the pay-go rule. Now, what's the pay-go rule? Well, basically, it means that spending is mandated, right? If you do any spending, it must be offset with either budget cuts or tax increases. Basically, everything has to be paid for. Fascinating. Now, most people think, oh, well, that makes sense. I mean, you can't do anything like that in your household. But remember, government doesn't run like a household. So, and look, while there are programs that require initial investment, I mean, there are programs that require initial investment up front when it comes to funding, and then provide savings down the line. Under this rule, Democrats would either have to make cuts somewhere else or raise taxes, something that's actually very, very difficult to sell. So that's your big problem. Republicans will come back and say things like, oh, well, that's it. Democrats, they want to raise your taxes. They want to raise your taxes to pay for these entitlement programs and all this socialism and welfare. They can't. Well, we're $20 trillion in debt. Can't afford it, can't afford it, can't afford it. And if you pound that message enough, it's possible it will work. But it will definitely work with Democratic politicians who now get the message of, oh, no, we can't afford it. We got to do this pay-go rule, right? Now, Dan explains that forcing budget offsets for every piece of legislation would make it more difficult to pass a host of liberal agenda items, from Medicare for all to tuition-free college. Now, both of those things have been shown to save money. Nonetheless, there is upfront cost in setting those systems up. So when you try to set up a Medicare for all system, you're going to need funding. Well, if we're under a pay-go rule, guess what? It's going to be much more difficult to secure that funding because it has to be immediately offset by, once again, budget cuts or tax increases. At least, as I said before, under this rule. Now, it continues. As Dayen writes, a trend of Democrats caring far more about deficits than Republicans, constraining the activist impulses of liberal policymakers while giving conservatives free rein to blow giant holes in the tax code. And that giant hole, one of them would be the Trump tax cuts. That's only the first round of Trump tax cuts. He actually wants to do more. A second round. Oh boy. Now, according to Axios, Pelosi is committed to reviving pay-go, which she instituted as a standing rule upon taking over the House in 2007. That's to show how conservative Nancy Pelosi actually is. Though she waived the rule to pass the economic stimulus bill responding to the Great Recession, most of the other major legislative initiatives of the early Obama era, including the ACA, were paid for. Now, do Republicans talk about that at all when they attack the ACA? No, of course not. You don't even hear Democrats talking about this. No, they don't mention that it's paid for at all. And Republicans still say, oh, it's so unaffordable. We can't afford to keep this program. We got to get rid of it. No matter what, Republicans are going to win under the pay-go rule. So now in 2010, Obama took this rule further by signing the statutory Pay-As-You-Go Act, which enables presidents to enforce across-the-board cuts if Congress violates the rule. So basically, what Dayen is pointing out is that this entire rule is meant to handicap progressive initiatives while empowering Republicans and, of course, meeting them at their own arguments. You're meeting them on their terms, the terms that they set. Now, speaking of Republicans, when they took over the House, they changed pay-go. Well, what they changed it to? They changed it to Cutco. They applied offsets to spending, only to spending instead of tax cuts, mandating that spending must be offset with budget cuts instead of tax increases. You know what happens when you do that? You tear a giant hole in the budget. And of course, that's what the point is. Now, Dayen notes that the move was a formalization of the trend. Deficit fears stop Democrats from moving forward on social programs, while Republicans plow ahead with tax cuts whenever they get into power. So, and of course, that is disastrous. But that's what's been happening for quite some time. I think this actually really started happening in the Clinton era. Now, Pelosi's planned legislative package for the beginning of the potential House takeover would also include, though, establishing ethics and lobbying reforms, lowering the cost of health insurance premiums and prescription drugs. There is one surefire way to do that. It's Medicare for all, which, of course, Pelosi is absolutely against, and spending $1 trillion for infrastructure investment. Those would cost money, and under PAYGO, all of that would have to be offset. And because, again, they're not going to be able to pass through tax increases very easily, or possibly at all. What would they cut? Well, I remember Obama putting Social Security on the table. So there's that. Now, look, here's the thing. Dayen does note that liberals have plenty of ideas of how to raise revenue, but it puts them in a box, politically, having to propose tax increases that Republicans gleefully broadcast. Meanwhile, Republicans unconcerned with deficits get to play Santa Claus without having to match tax cuts with anything unappealing. And that is how the game is played. See, conservatives, which of course have always been backed by by big money, during the FDR era, for example, they kept getting their asses handed to them. They got creamed every election. Why is that? It's because we had strong progressives that were actually strong on policy. Turns out people like progressive policy. They like Social Security. They love Medicare. And so when you push forward those kinds of programs that actually help regular human beings and not corporations and not members of the super rich elite that already have all the money in the world, you win. You win. Republicans, conservatives, I should say, were getting destroyed election after election. And so they decided, wait a minute, if Democrats can be Santa Claus, why can't we? Except we're going to be the Santa to rich white people. Keep it real. And so what they did is they said tax cuts for everyone. And they forced Democrats into the position of continuously balancing the budget, which means, of course, austerity. So it's been like that ever since they had that idea. Democrats balance the budget, Republicans destroy it. And then, of course, they turn government surpluses into deficits when they're into power. And when they're not in power, by the way, when they're not in power, they howl and scream about the deficit and debt. And then, of course, Democrats decide, oh, my God, I have to listen to Republicans when they talk about debt and deficits. Fine. Here's austerity. And when they do austerity, they can't do progressive programs like Medicare for all. And so that actually causes people to feel financial pain, which makes them think, well, if I vote for Democrats, all they're going to do is do austerity measures on us. Where Republicans, they're going to give us tax cuts. We're going to keep more of our money. That's how the game is played. That's how the game is played, man. This is a no-win scenario for progressives. And now the current crop of Democrats that are financed by corporations is in on the game. They buy this narrative hook, line, and sinker. Though there are some Democrats that are fighting back. Here you have Senator Brian Schatz. Now he said, quote, on the PAYGO rule, quote, I don't play the pay for game. I just reject the idea that only progressive ideas have to be paid for. We can work on that as we go through the process, but I think it's a trap. And here, I really wish I had a clip of Admiral Akbar. Because it's true. It's true. It's a trap. It's a Republican trap. Now, not only that, but you have Rahul Grijalva. Now, he's progressive. Back in June, he told The Hill, the pay-go thing is an absurd idea now, given the times and given what's already been done to curry favor with corporate America. He also argued that it was irresponsible to try to tie up Congress's ability to respond to economic downturns or, in the current discussion, to slash programs, which I absolutely agree with. And of course, the entire discussion that we're having right now completely ignores MMT. That is modern monetary theory. So here you have a former Sanders staffer, Stephanie Kelton, who's been out there, who's been talking about the idea of modern monetary theory. Now, she said that public spending is only constrained when the economy is running at full capacity and inflation starts to rise. Now, is that the case today? No, we actually have incredibly low levels of inflation. Public deficits, she points out, are just another way of talking about private surpluses. She has warned of the dangers of balanced budgets that take money from the hands of ordinary people. Now, Kelton has been involved in strategy sessions with Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and remains close to Senator Sanders, who would chair the Budget Committee if Democrats take the Senate. But Pelosi has been unmoved. Now, let's go back for a second. You imagine Senator Bernie Sanders in charge of the Budget Committee. Awesome. Now, look, I'm pretty sure Schumer also remains unconvinced because Schumer loves the big money, the big corporate money. And so he's like, no, we got to give tax cuts to corporations, and we can't spend too much. We've got to be conservative on our spending. Ridiculous, right? Now, in a statement, Kelton said that pay-go is a self-imposed, economically illiterate approach to budgeting. Republicans know this, which is why they have unabashedly used their power to expand deficits and hence deliver windfall gains for big corporations and the already well-to-do. And she has a solution to this. She said, instead of vowing budget chastity, Democrats should be articulating an agenda that excites voters so that they can unleash the full power of the public purse on their behalf. I love that. That's absolutely what we should do. But the Democrats right now, led by Nancy Pelosi, in the House at least, and Chuck Schumer in the Senate, they'd rather play in the hands of Republicans, just like they always do, because they're paid to lose. If Pelosi wins re-election in her primary, then look, any blue wave, it doesn't matter how big it is never going to lead to progressive policy. We have got to get rid of Nancy Pelosi. Now, she is up for re-election. She is facing a primary, Kevin De Leon. And Kevin De Leon is far more progressive than Nancy Pelosi. Perhaps not as progressive as we would like, and there are certainly some arguments against De Leon, but you can't argue that he's worse than Pelosi. He's miles better than Pelosi. So any of you watching in California, get involved, man. Go out and vote. Primaries. They matter. Nancy Pelosi cannot continue. If we have a blue wave, she cannot be Speaker of the House. If that happens, then say goodbye to Medicare for all. It ain't never going to happen. As long as she's in charge, any progressive priority, never going to happen if she's in charge. Go out and vote. Very, very important. Okay. All right. And speaking of Pelosi, Christine Pelosi is actually seems to be fairly progressive. So not all Pelosi's are alike. I just wanted to throw that in there because she's actually been working on quite a few reforms in the Democratic Party. So probably far more progressive than her mother. Okay. That said, let's move on. let's go to fun. So Bob Woodward has a new book coming out about Trump's White House, and already it's caused quite a stir. There's already been a lot of great stuff that has been released, including how most of his staff thinks Donald Trump is a gigantic idiot. I've got a couple of examples of that from the book, and these are amazing. For one, after Trump left a meeting with Defense Secretary James Mattis on North Korea, Woodward recounts Mattis was particularly exasperated and alarmed, telling close associates that the president acted like and had the understanding of, quote, a 5th or 6th grader. Now, this is during the time where he was having an argument with Kim Jong-un, calling him Little Rocket Man. Look, not great for peace, right? But it gets worse. After Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad launched a supposed chemical attack on civilians in April 2017, Trump called Mattis and said he wanted to assassinate the dictator. He said, quote, verbatim, let's fucking kill him, let's go in, let's kill the fucking lot of them, according to Woodward. Now, Mattis, who was there, told the president, oh, no, sir, I'll get right on it. But after hanging up the phone, he told a senior aide, no, we're not going to do any of that. We're actually going to be much more measured. Please disregard and ignore the baby. He will be distracted with something else later on. So what happened? Well, obviously, we didn't assassinate Bashar al-Assad. That would have been a disaster. Probably would have almost certainly put us at war with Russia. So we ended up doing airstrikes. Now, it's not just that. There's more. Trump's personal lawyer, John Dowd, describes the president as, quote, a fucking liar, telling Trump that he would end up in an orange jumpsuit if he testified to special counsel Robert Mueller. Now, this happened, of course, after the mock interview with Trump, where, of course, he sat down. They set up this whole thing where he was going to practice for the Mueller interview. So they asked him a bunch of questions, and Donald Trump couldn't stop lying and contradicting himself. And generally just bungling the entire thing. So now, Dowd, his lawyer, as I said before, on the Russia investigation, is like, oh my God, this guy's an idiot. He's gonna lie himself into jail. He's gonna perjure himself. He already did so several times during this mock interview and went on a 30-minute rant. We can't have him do this. We can't have him interview with Mueller. It can't happen. But Trump, he's like, no. No, I did fantastic. What are you talking about? I'm a genius. Please let me testify. No, I'm a great witness. Believe me. Oh my God. Now, this led to Dowd meeting with Robert Mueller and explaining why Trump is too stupid to be interviewed. He said, quote, I'm not going to sit there and let him look like an idiot. You publish that transcript because everything leaks in Washington, and the guys overseas are going to say, I told you he was an idiot. I told you he was a goddamn dumbbell. What are we dealing with this idiot for? So he made the argument that if you do this, if he sits down with you, that's going to delegitimize us in front of all of our allies. And not just in front of our allies, but also on the world stage. We cannot show how dumb our president really is. Now, of course, everybody already knows how stupid Donald Trump is and how they can play him to pretty much get whatever the hell that they want. But at the time, man, they're like, no, don't let him do it. Don't let him do it. And you know what happened? The next day, Dowd resigned. Now, why would a lawyer step down from the biggest case in his lifetime? Well, it's because Donald Trump is so dumb, he would put himself in jail for perjuring himself. He's an idiot. There's more. Chief of Staff John Kelly talked about Trump. He said, quote, he's an idiot. It's pointless to try to convince him of anything. He's gone off the rails. We're in crazy town. I don't even know why any of us are here. This is the worst job I've ever had. I love that quote in 40 different ways. Amazing. But it gets worse. Not only did his aides and staffers refer to him as an idiot, call him stupid and mock him, but also they ended up stealing things off his desk. This is an amazing story as well. Now, there was a letter, a draft letter, that would have withdrawn the U.S. from a trade agreement with South Korea. Now, there's a reason that they didn't want to withdraw from that. It's because it would have taken away a strategic location away from the military, right? Where they could respond to threats. So this is a national security measure, right? Now, Cohn, when he learned about this, he's like, we can't have that. We can't have him sign this. This is going to be a disaster. So he told an associate, quote, I stole it off his desk. I wouldn't let him see it. He's never going to see that document. Got to protect the country. There's another example of people stealing stuff off his desk. For example, the president ordered Rob Porter to draw up a document withdrawing the United States from NAFTA. So this is something that the president really, really wanted to do. I want to get out of NAFTA. So make a document, Rob. Okay? Well, Cohn apparently told Rob Porter, don't worry, I can stop this. I'll just take the paper off his desk. And that's exactly what he did. He came in, he stole the paper, and then Donald Trump, and the most amazing thing here is that Donald Trump didn't even notice. Oh my God. They know he is so dumb and so disinterested and actually doing things, policy, right? Policy that even he came up with. That people can steal stuff off his desk and he doesn't understand, he doesn't know. They get away with it. All they have to do is hide his papers and wait, and he'll get distracted by Twitter. Wow. In fact, Porter was quoted as saying, a third of my job was trying to react to some of the really dangerous ideas that he had and try to give him reasons to believe that maybe they weren't such good ideas. Well, knowing Trump's track record, very, very difficult to convince him that one of his ideas, which are, of course, the greatest, the most tremendous ideas, and that nobody could ever think of these ideas, especially ideas that are so great, very hard to convince him that those ideas are bad. Man. And of course, apparently another third was hiding those papers. Now, back to Cohn. Now, of course, Cohen was a little angry at Trump, nearly resigned after Trump had come out and talked about Charlottesville. He said that there were good people on both sides. Remember that was when the neo-Nazis literally ran over a protester, Heather Heyer, and killed her and injured many other people. Trump was like, oh, no, good people on both sides. But it turns out that's not actually what he felt about this. Now, Trump actually said, quote, and I'm going to give you this, and this is disastrous, right? That was the biggest fucking mistake I've made and the worst speech I've ever given. So he's saying the both sides speech. He actually wanted to favor the neo-Nazis. Cohn is Jewish. And he's like, oh my God, you're siding with neo-Nazis, with people that hate me. In fact, he then started to regard the president as a professional liar and threatened to resign. No, he didn't. But when Cohn met with Trump to deliver his resignation letter after Charlottesville, the president said this was treason and persuaded his economic advisor to stay on. Kelly then confided to Cohn that he shared Cohn's horror at Trump's handling of the tragedy and shared Cohn's fury with Trump. He said, quote, I would have taken that resignation letter and shoved it up his ass 6 different times. Now, John Kelly has had his own chance at resigning, but he has refused to do so. I'm beginning to think that maybe it's actually because he's trying to prevent Trump from doing something incredibly dangerous to the country. And that's giving John Kelly a lot of credit. Now, other quotes here. I'm going to give you some from Trump himself. So that was just Trump's staff dunking on him, right? So now I'm going to give Trump, get to Trump dunking on his staff. So this is great. Now, Jeff Sessions, right? Now, on Sessions, Trump said, quote, "This guy is mentally retarded. He's this dumb Southerner. He couldn't even be a one-person country lawyer down in Alabama." So this is what he thinks about Southern people, right? Oh, you're dumb. You're just another dumb Southerner. That's what he thinks about you guys, MAGA guys. Not only that, but Trump too told Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross, "I don't trust you. I don't want you doing any more negotiations. You're past your prime." He's telling Wilbur Ross that he's past his prime. Wilbur Ross is a terrible person, by the way. Wilbur Ross is terrible. Jeff Sessions is terrible. I don't like defending these guys at all. But man, you've got terrible people among even more terrible people. I mean, Ross stole millions, not just from his own customers, but from people he worked with. He would take their checks, put it into his pocket. "Sorry, I'm not going to pay you." "Why are you not going to pay me?" "Because I stole your money. And you're not getting a dime of what I owe you." Not going to happen. But I think the best quote of him talking shit about his supposed friends is talking to Rudy Giuliani. Now, this is before Rudy Giuliani became his lawyer. Giuliani has, of course, been a longtime Trump friend and Trump defender. But get a load of how he refers to Giuliani, especially after an appearance of where he was defending the president. He said, quote, "Rudy, you're a baby. I've never seen a worse defense of me in my life. They took your diaper off right there. You're like a little baby that needed to be changed. What are you going to be, a man?" He's talking to Rudy Giuliani, his supposed friend. And he's telling him that they took your diaper off on live TV. When are you going to be a man? Be a man, Rudy. Be a man. And you know what? The most amazing thing here is that Rudy Giuliani then became his lawyer. How sad is that? How much are people going to debase themselves to work for Donald Trump? Unless, of course, Rudy Giuliani is like, "Oh no, I'm going to be Donald Trump's lawyer, but I'm going to be the worst lawyer in the world. I'm going to make sure that I defend him so poorly that he ends up in jail." I don't know. That's conspiracy, right? Maybe Rudy Giuliani is, look, either Giuliani is the dumbest lawyer in America, or he's a genius and he's getting revenge on Trump. Wouldn't that be amazing? But, I mean, look, imagine the things Rudy Giuliani must have said behind Trump's back. Look, here's the thing. There's no loyal to Donald Trump here, right? All these guys are either weirdly looking out for the country. Like, I never thought that I would give Rex Tillerson credit, because I don't agree with Rex Tillerson on anything. But Rex Tillerson, when he was at the State Department, actually he prevented a war from happening when it came to another Middle East war between Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. He prevented a war. Or Jeff Sessions, who had to spies. But Jeff Sessions is actually doing his job when it comes to at least Duncan Hunter, who was, of course, indicted for spending campaign money on personal stuff. Or Chris Collins, that was indicted for doing insider trading. This is the insanity that's the White House, where you actually defend people that normally I would have no interest in defending. Terrible people. We're defending terrible people. But because Donald Trump, the president, is an unhinged lunatic. My God, man. What have we become? What have we become? Man. Well, there is some hope, though. There is hope that the world will probably end. We will all die out before anything terrible happens. Anything worse happens, I should say. We're basically it's the end of everything. Everything is terrible. Okay. All right. Just doing a little musing. Let's go to the last story. Okay. And out with a bang. So NASA has released some disturbing video of lakes that are bubbling in the remote Arctic tundra. Now, I'm going to have to explain why this is problematic, but I think you'll understand. Now, first, some context. The international research team funded by NASA, as part of their Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, codenamed ABOVE, recently published their results of that study in Nature Communications. So they went up to study climate change in the Arctic and see how bad it's actually getting. Well, it turns out it's pretty bad. What they found were bubbling lakes as greenhouse gases are released from the previously frozen ground, leading to increased greenhouse gas emissions and a warming positive feedback. Which, by the way, is not at all positive when it comes to civilization. So, okay, what happens is climate change, global warming, is basically driven by greenhouse gases being released into the atmosphere from things like burning oil and gas industry, right? Methane from fracking is another good example. That's melting the Arctic permafrost. That permafrost contains carbon, which was frozen in the atmosphere millions of years ago, buried under the ice, which is then being released into the atmosphere, which drives even more global warming. In addition, the team also investigated the presence of something called thermokarst lakes. Now, these small pocket lakes are produced from melting permafrost. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when you have a small lake in the middle of ice, well, basically a melted area, what it does is that water, since it has a larger volume than water, or I should say ice has a larger volume than water, when permafrost melts, the land in the area tends to sag. That creates a depression. That small lake is there. That also leads to faster melting of the permafrost and quicker release of greenhouse gases. So once you start melting, once you start getting these thermokarst lakes, that increases the amount of melting because now you've got the water there as well. Oh boy. Now, they explain in the study that the sudden release of greenhouse gases from that melting permafrost will trigger a positive feedback as it adds to overall warming, as I mentioned before. Now, what's even more disastrous about this is that researchers found that this process can be quite abrupt, leading to a larger and quicker impact on global warming. Now, that backs up other research that says that global warming, it's happening right now, and it's getting exponentially worse. It's increasing faster than what previous models have actually said before. Now, what have we done in the face of this? I mean, this is happening. We have documented evidence. We have proof. There is melting permafrost. We've got more carbon in the atmosphere. What have we done in America? We've elected a child who thinks climate change is a hoax made up by the Chinese. That's not just a punchline to a bad joke. but it actually has terrible policy implications, including the United States removing itself from the Paris Climate Accords and basically doubling down on coal. The government, under Trump, has eliminated a lot of regulations, slapped tariffs on solar panels, making them more expensive, eliminated fuel standards, and of course, without those standards, you will actually end up using more fuel in your cars, which of course leads to more carbon in the atmosphere and more warming. We're already in the middle of a climate catastrophe, and through the actions of, or I should say inactions of our government, it's only going to get worse. Now, scientists have speculated that even if we were to cease all the releases of carbon that we can from industry, if we were to stop and become carbon neutral, no carbon at all, we would not be able to undo the damage that we have caused to the environment already. The Arctic is literally melting and bubbling as we speak. There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do about it. The damage is already done. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't go to alternative energy sources. We absolutely should. We should do it now. But what I'm saying is that climate change is already baked into the equation. We've known about it for decades and decided that as a society, corporate profits were more important than making sure that we don't mess up the environment. Just pointing that out there. Look, ExxonMobil knew they had internal studies that pointed to, hey, if we keep burning fossil fuels, we are going to have climate change, we're going to have global warming, and it's going to be a disaster. So I'm just letting you guys know what the stakes are and what's going to happen. We're already going to face an uncertain, definitely warmer future when it involves the climate. And what we should do is to make sure that we don't make it worse. It's already going to be bad, but we can take steps now to make sure it's not worse. Now, that is going to involve a major revolution in the way that we generate and use energy in this country. That shift's not going to happen, however, under the Trump administration. We're going in the wrong direction. We're going to continue to go in the wrong direction until we elect politicians that actually do care about the environment. Unless we, get involved in the political process, because we are at crisis point, and it's not going to get any better. And if we don't do something, it's going to get worse. We've got to do something. We've got to do something now. Get involved. There are elections. There are midterms. They do have consequences, especially for the environment. So we need to go out and do as much as we can. And that's all we can do. I wish I had better news for you guys. But it's a disaster. Okay. All right. That was depressing. I have more depressing news for you guys. No show tomorrow. So I will not be here tomorrow. We are still dealing with a bit of an infestation in the house and in the studio. So I actually don't have a fancy studio or anything like that. So we have Exterminator coming out tomorrow, so there will not be a show. So sad. But we'll be back Friday, so we'll have some good stories then. So as always, make sure to let me know what you'd like to see me cover on the show. Definitely take suggestions and things like that. Please don't forget to like and share. And very, very important, please consider becoming a patron. $1, $2, $5, it doesn't matter. Help us out. We need your help more than ever. I know everybody's saying that, but it's true. Without you guys, there will not be a show. So please support independent progressive media. Help us beat mainstream media and become a major progressive voice. So, all right, guys. Thank you. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, guys. And we'll see you on Friday.